it will come to you by surprise, crossing through your doorway, calling your name in greeting, turning like a child who quickens suddenly within you. It will astonish you how wide your heart will open in welcome for the joy that finds you. So ready and still so unprepared.
Friends, we are gathered as, oh goodness. How are we doing? Let's try that again. Do I dare project? All right, how was that? That's better. Joy. Friends, we are gathered as a people of faith, a congregation of hope, a community of love, and of course a witness to joy. And this morning we are gathered on this fourth and final Sunday, a Sunday that we lift up and honor as Joy Sunday here at Fountain Street Church. As we gather and kindle the light of joy amongst one another and in our hearts, let us remember that it is upon us and entrusted within us and to us to carry that illuminating power of joy out into our world. May we take a moment to ponder this witness, and may we resolve our spirits and our hearts to the potentiality that joy presents to us this season. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Fountain Street Church. My name is Reverend Christopher Rowe. I have the responsibility and the honor of serving as a senior minister here alongside my colleague, the Reverend Jody Benton, and a host of wonderful staff who are committed to supporting this congregation in being a community of love, of faith, of hope, and of course, joy. It is good to be with each and every one of you this morning, whether you have gathered in this magnificent space of love and hope and faith, or you are joining us from home right now or sometime from now. Please know that each and every one of you has a place of belonging and kindred spirit in this beloved community, where all of these values upon justice and peace and liberation and equality and equity are the liberating and liberation that we seek each week. On behalf of everyone who calls us a spiritual home, I invite you now to turn to one another, greet one another in that peace and that spirit of joy, and know that you will be called back with our opening hymn. Friends, we have a rich tradition here at Fountain Street of hearing those ancient words of Mary's Magnificat on this, the Joy Sunday that we gather in celebration of today. So in that tradition, our ancient witness comes to us from the Christian Gospels as told to us in the book of Luke. Hear this ancient story of joy as it calls into consciousness our own understanding of joy here and now. In those days, Mary set out and went with haste to the Judean town in a hill country, where she entered the house of Zechariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the child leaped in her womb. And Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit and exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And why has this happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me? For as soon as I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leaped for joy. And blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her by the Lord."
And Mary said, "My soul magnifies God, and my spirit rejoices in God who saves. For God has looked with favor on the lowliness of this servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is God's name. God's mercy is for those who find awe in God from generation to generation. God has shown strength with his might. God has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. God has lifted down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. God has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. God has helped servant Israel in remembrance of mercy according to the promises made to our ancestors, to Abram and Sarah, and to their descendants forever." Mary remained with Elizabeth about 3 months and then returned to her home.
Good morning. Soft as a dawn, into the light, this child, innocent child, soft as a fawn, this child is born. One small heart, one pair of eyes, one work of art. Here in my arms, here he lies, trusting and warm. This child is born. One small heart, one pair of eyes, one work of art. Here in my arms, here he lies, blessed this morn, a child is born.
Our contemporary witness this morning is the retelling and the reframing of Mary's Magnificat as reframed for us by the Reverend M. Jade Kaiser.
My soul is alive with thoughts of God. What a wonder their liberating works. Though the world has been harsh to me, God has shown me kindness, seen my worth, and called me to courage. Surely those who come after me will call me blessed. Even when my heart weighs heavy with grief, still, so does hope abide within me. Holy is the one who makes it so. From generation to generation, love's mercy is handed out. None are beyond the borders of God's transforming compassion. The power of God is revealed among those who labor for justice. They humble the arrogant. They turn unjust thrones into dust. Their wisdom is revealed in the lives and truths of those on the margins. God is a feast for the hungry. God is the great redistributor of wealth and resources. God is the ceasing of excessive and destructive production, that all earth might rest. Through exiles and enslavement, famines and wars, white supremacy and climate crises, God is a champion in loss, a deliverer from evil, a lover whose touch restores. This is the promise they made to my ancestors, to me, to all the creatures and creations now and yet coming. And in this promise, I find my strength. Come, great healer, and be birthed through us.
Just a few minutes before we started, a blessed soul out there mentioned to me that she really appreciated my ability to keep my messages concise and to the point. And now I'm self-conscious that we're not there today. Have grace. Friends, a few tangential things before we get rolling. The first of which, there are actually some pretty good things that came out of this season of an augmented Advent schedule here at Fountain Street Church. As you might recall, we started a week earlier than most of the Christian churches around the world, and that meant that our Sundays were differently themed. A lot of you may not realize that we actually operate off of a different cycle of themes anyway here at Fountain Street Church. Unsurprisingly, we do faith, hope, love, joy, honored in our Advent wreath each year and in the themes of our preaching and our worship together. But the broader Christian church follows a sequence more in line with hope, peace, joy, love. And so we're always off in that rhythm, except on years where it's completely just thrown up in the air, and we join Christians all over the world in celebrating Joy today. Hey, I was at lunch with clergy colleagues this week when we realized that. We all shared the similar experience of not wanting to preach on joy today. So it's a wonderful, wonderful occasion, though, and we find meaning and significance every year in those seasons. And finally, it was brought to my attention by my seminary preaching professor this week. That was a while ago. In fact, he reminded me this week that it was 10 years ago that I was finishing his class this week. So 10 years ago, I'm in this preaching class. Probably to no one's surprise, I didn't want to be in that class. Didn't see myself getting down this path, as it were. And on the last day of the class, he reminded me, though I had not forgotten, he went around to affirm everyone in the class. Oh, you bring good life and a tantalizing spirit to the good news, and you make people want to pick up the Bible and rediscover it once again. And he got to me, and he said, and Christopher, you're so haunting and unsettling and creepy. Well, he reminded me this week that he said to his wife, he's since retired from the collegiate world, you know, I don't remember much about my students, but I can still remember almost everything that Reverend Christopher said. It was haunting, it was creepy, and it was unsettling, but I still remember it. Friends, I'm a little bit dark and a little haunting sometimes and a little unsettling, which makes aspects of Christmas and Advent a little difficult for me to swallow sometimes. These themes are so wonderful, and yet culturally we have come to embrace them in different ways than I often do, including this theme of joy we've gathered in celebration today. I'm much more penitential. I'm much more of that walk of life in step with the liturgical calendars of the Episcopal tradition or even the Catholic. A lot of time thinking, ruminating, digesting some of the harder and more haunting parts of life. And so I love these penitential seasons. You probably know that by me now. I love the somber days that cradle the days of the dead, complete with the Feast of All Saints and All Souls. I love the period of our year marked as the 10 days of penitence in Judaism, bookended with Rosh Hashanah and, of course, Yom Kippur. I love the space that can be found for introspection only known in the observance of Ramadan. And of course, I love the powerful lessons that are passed down from our ancestors in the retellings and the re-ritualizations of Passover. And of course, I love those deeply introspective days of Lent and this transformative period of Advent we find ourselves in. You've probably noticed how much attention that we have and I have been giving some of these sacred holidays over the last couple years together, from Ash Wednesday to All Saints Sunday to even Holy Thursday and Good Friday, even here at Fountain Street Church. Because I love these penitential journeys. Not unlike Lent or any of the other world traditions and holidays that I mentioned, I suppose. Advent is a deeply penitential season. And more importantly, it's a penitential journey, one that you and I in our community of faith have shared now for this last 4 weeks, albeit a week earlier than some of our Christian counterparts this year. It's a season of waiting and listening, a season of observing and understanding. And it's a spiritual quest and journey to see just how deeply we are willing to look into those ancient mirrors held up to us by the prophets each year and just how much deeper we're willing to look into a different kind of way of being the world. The very world, as I keep saying to you this Advent season, that we know could be, should be, and must be. But unlike Lent or any of those other penitential seasons, Advent doesn't take us deep into the isolation of the wilderness. These holy Sundays don't take us into some kind of rigid isolation and loneliness of the desert. And the spiritual season doesn't call us into the valley of shadows referenced in other parts of the year, because this season, this Advent season, is deeply a people season. It's a community season. It's a season of belonging. And if Lent is about doing all of those things and going into those spaces, those secluded spaces that help us to become more in touch with the presence of God and the power of the divine Spirit within us, and I suggest to you this morning on this Joy Sunday that the journey of Advent is about going to those places and spaces that connect us to the presence of God and the power of the divine Spirit among us. Among us. If Lent takes us out into the wilderness and the desert and the quiet places, then Advent undoubtedly takes us to the civic square, the societal center, and to the noisy, busy, and boisterous people spaces. If Lent is about becoming, then Advent is surely about belonging. If Lent dares us to imagine a life in which the divine Spirit within us could most be fully alive and fully enfleshed within ourselves, then Advent, and these four bold themes of Advent, dare for us to imagine a world, and embody a world, and enflesh a world in which we see that same human dignity and divine right available to everyone among us. If Lent takes us into a period of silence that's so loud that it cultivates ancient truths within, then let's let Advent be so noisy and so big and so boisterous from the prophets among us and in our time and our world, who dare us to look right back at those societal and social mirrors of truth. Prophets who call us to look through the windows of the world that could be, should be, and must be. And prophets who command for us to stand at that ancient crossroads right there with them and officially declare which direction we want to go and what kind of world we're willing to embody and make manifest and incarnate in our time and for our people in this beloved community. This penitential journey that we've been on takes us deep into the heart and the core and the spirit of the people places. So far on this shared journey, through and to these people spaces, we've sung beloved hymns, we've heard beloved anthems, we've recited poetry and prose, we've lit 4 candles now, and we've prayed together, and we've imagined our world through the Advent lens as we've pondered the power of faith, hope, and love, or agape, as Bruce Bodie shared with us last week. All of them enfleshed within us, and each one of them embodied among us. Faith, hope, and love. I was elated to have Bruce speak last week, specifically on the themes of love and agape, not only because of the depth and breadth that he brought into this pulpit with him, but also because it's an area of theological significance and philosophical importance that we have explored here together this year at Fountain Street. The very passages of Paul that Bruce spoke on last week were in fact passages we've explored on more than one occasion this year. Back in February, we explored together and acknowledged together that Paul was also on a journey, venturing to and through the people places, ministering to a world that was experiencing a crisis in leadership, vision, direction, and division, and in responding to a world once again entrenching itself in injustice, oppression, and marginalization. An ancient world, as I keep saying to you this season, that continues to hold up a mirror to our own within and beyond these cathedral walls. And so we penned that love poem, or hymn to agape, if you will, as a way of holding a window up to the ancient community and inviting them to see the world in a celebrating their differences and challenges, rather than being divided by them. Hear that again. He was inviting them to see the world rooted in celebrating differences and challenges, rather than being divided by them. Talk about a promise of hope worthy of our faith in the world we share this morning. Some of you might recall that a few months later, we also determined that perhaps compassion would be a better way to frame Paul's understanding of love. Compassion as an active posture of love. Compassion is an action. Compassion is a living, breathing, and active posture that requires something from each and every one of us. A form of being that simply moves from feeling something for other people to actually taking on their perspective, understanding their suffering, and surrendering a bit of ourselves to their inner and outer world. An action and a posture that moves us right to the core of the people places and to the heart and the center and the soul of beloved community. Faith, hope, and compassion. Which brings us to this morning. Which brings us right back to that egregious and audacious theme of joy in a world that doesn't necessarily always feel joyful or joy-filled, does it? I feel like every year when the time comes for me to proclaim the good news of joy, many of you, and myself included, aren't necessarily feeling all that joyful or at least having a hard time remembering what joy is and where to find it in this messy world. Just this past week, as I mentioned earlier, I was having lunch with a group of clergy colleagues who were lamenting on having to find joy and find a theme in which they could bring to their congregations in the midst of what so much heartbreak and heartache in our world. To no one's surprise this morning, there wasn't a clergy person in the room who was eager to get up and preach about joy this Sunday. I too had to wrestle with this egregious idea of joy in the midst of our world right now. And in that wrestling, I was reminded of a quote from a late priest and theologian, Henry Nouwen, a voice I know I have shared with you from this pulpit this morning, who once wrote, "Joy is hidden in compassion." The word compassion literally means to suffer with. It seems quite unlikely that suffering with another person would bring joy, yet being with a person in pain, offering our simple presence in despair, sharing with a friend times of confusion and uncertainty, such experiences can bring us deep joy. Not happiness, not excitement, not great satisfaction, but the quiet joy of being there for someone else and living in deep solidarity with our brothers and sisters in this human family. Often, this is a solidarity in weakness, in brokenness, in woundedness, but it leads to the center of joy, which is sharing our humanity with one another. But it leads to the center of joy, which is sharing our humanity with one another. End quote. Given Nouwen's ideas and suggestions on joy, the observance of joy on this fourth and final Sunday of Advent, particularly and especially in a world that we occupy, almost as a postlude to faith, hope, and love, or agape, or compassion, actually makes a lot of sense to me. It makes sense that as our Advent journey comes to a close today, our community of faith chooses to end this journey on the theme of joy. It makes sense that as we venture to and through the people, spaces, and places, and as we ponder, imagine, incarnate, embody, and enflesh faith, hope, and love, we too would respond with joy. It makes sense that a young girl, the very same young girl that you heard from earlier, in an ancient world riddled with injustice and oppression and exploitation and marginalization, would embody and enflesh faith, hope, and love so profoundly that at the annunciation of her next ministry to the world, she would also respond in joy. It makes sense that in a moment in which any one of us might be terrified to say, yes, Mary as prophet does so. And she releases her revolutionary war cry that you heard earlier in the form of unbridled and unrestrained joy. It makes sense that as she embodied faith and hope for a better world, she allowed her radical love and compassion and commitment to agape to say no to the world that already existed around her. And in doing that, she understood the true center of joy because she truly experienced her true and shared humanity with the rest of a broken and suffering world. It makes sense then that Mary's penitential no to the world that she occupied was also a joyful yes to a new one. And so too then does it make sense to all of us this morning that in our own world that is absolutely riddled with loss and lament, suffering and sorrow, unknown and uncertainty, and injustice and inequity, there's still so much possibility for joy for each of us. There's still a lot of possibility for joy. Not necessarily that bubbling wellspring of happiness or that fountain of excitement or even oceans of deep satisfaction like Nouwen was suggesting, but rather the kind of joy that could only be experienced when we know and understand the suffering of those among us in the people places, and align ourselves with those who are in need and depend upon our solidarity the most. I'll say that again to make sure that we hear it, because I think our world really needs to hear it. The kind of joy that can only be experienced when we know and understand the suffering of those among us in the people places, and when we align ourselves with those who need and depend on our solidarity the most. And when you frame it that way, or look at it that way, if you can look at it that way, there most certainly is so much possibility for joy in our world. And isn't that some good news this morning? Advent is a deeply penitential journey. And as we pilgrim together to and through the people places this year, as we imagined the ancient call for faith, hope, and love over these past 4 weeks, and even as we held the tension of faithlessness, hopelessness, and lovelessness, and of course the paradoxes of Advent that were once outlined by David Rankin, we too have been given the opportunity to respond with joy this week. We too have been invited to experience God's joy that can only be known in siding with the oppressed, being with those who are in pain, aligning ourselves with those at the margins, and declaring our solidarity with all who despair within and beyond these walls. We too have been invited to join the ranks of our ancestors in this 154-year ministry and know and understand and affirm and side with the oppressed and the suffering in our world, and tirelessly and ceaselessly seek ways to be one with their suffering, not just to make them feel better about it, but to be one with their suffering and one with building a better world in which that suffering be no more. And more importantly, friends, we too have been invited, if not called, into the deepest parts of the people places, the messy parts, the awkward parts, the parts that confront us with even more mirrors than we imagined were possible, the parts that afflict our paradigms and call into consciousness our paradoxes, and the parts that force us to join that ancient girl named Mary in saying no to the world as it is and saying yes to the kind of world that we know could be, should be, and must be. That is, after all, the ancient call of Advent. First told us in the faith of the ancient prophets, first witnessed to us in the hope of the ancient stories, first embodied to us in the love and the compassion and the agape of the ancient communities of faith, and now presented before us and shared with us this morning in this very contemporary invitation to join the liberating potentiality and promise of joy. Yes, there's a lot of suffering in this world. There is so much suffering to be found, and so much loss to be understood in and beyond these walls. The harrowing grip of violence and a vile cincture of iniquity and injustice continues to hinder humanity's quest towards wholeness. But as Nouwen suggested, and Mary knew, and Advent proclaims, there is still so much joy to be experienced for those who are willing to journey to and through Advent, through the people places, and through the spaces of faith, hope, and love in pursuit of solidarity, unity, and oneness with those who need us and our church's presence most. So, beloved, I pray that in this season of Advent and this journey with one another that we've been on, we surrender to the illimitable power of holy imagination, that we surrender to being inspired by the witness of the truth tellers before us and around us and among us and within us, and especially the truth tellers who have been calling us to be part of building a better world than the one we know we inherited. I pray that we as a beloved community of liberal faith and progressing values recognize the power and the potential and the promise of Advent that is greater than 4 weeks or 4 candles. And I pray that we recognize that Advent is far more than a mere countdown to Christmas Eve or a trite sermon series with 4 distinct themes. Because Advent is always happening around, among, and within each and every one of us, but only in the people places. So this morning, on this final Sunday of Advent, I'd like to leave you thematically where I have left you for the past several years on this 4th and final Sunday of Advent, with these words of assurance and this word of blessing. Advent is always happening. Advent is always happening. Advent is always happening within, among, and around us, and in many ways it is a never-ending season that moves through us and assuredly throughout the cosmos itself. And so, beloved, know this: there will always be another prophet. There will always be another mirror. There will always be another window. There will always be another crossroads and another journey to and through the people places. There will always be another chance to say no. And of course, there will always be another chance to say yes. And there will always be another Gabriel ready to visit us when we least expect it, even in the dead of the night or the darkness of the unknown, who's inviting us to be a more loving, just, and compassionate world. So the only question that remains for us this morning, and the only mystery in this season that is riddled with myth and mythicism, is how we will choose to respond to this unending song and invitation of truth. For your sake, and my sake, and this church's sake, and the sake of our world, I pray that we will choose to respond with joy. Will you take a moment of silence before our blessing of joy? Blessed are those who wait and pay attention and listen, for they will be ready for Gabriel's invitation. Blessed are those who free their minds and open their souls for the sake of the world, for they will be ready to look into the prophet's mirror and through the prophet's window. Blessed are those who wrestle with faith, for they are joining the ancestors in a similar sequence of being. Blessed are those who feel entwined with hopelessness, for they truly understand the magnitude and the potential of hope. Blessed are those who embody love and agape and compassion as an active way of being, and enflesh love as compassion with the other. For they are truly able to venture into and through the fullness of the people places where far too few dare to go. Blessed are those who know faith, who embody hope and enflesh love so deeply that when asked to take the next step into being a more loving and just world, they say yes with the unbridled, unharnessed, and unimaginable joy of Mary. For they show us the power of the Advent that is always turning within, among, and around us all. Blessed are those who need us most. Blessed are those we need most. Blessed is the gift of community, especially this community. Blessed are those in need of comfort and those who can comfort. Blessed is the messiness and the mystery, the truth-telling mirrors and the prophetic windows, the coming of peace waiting to be born, and the peacemakers among us, ready to give birth to whatever is next. May we truly and freely and courageously allow Advent to move within us beyond these 4 weeks, until the angel's call invites us to respond to what is needed of us with joy. And may it be so. May it be so. may be seated. Friends, we have this rich tradition that we talk about every week here at Fountain Street Church, where we give freely and joyously, of course, to our collection plate, which goes beyond these walls to serve organizations and needs and those who need our solidarity most beyond ourselves. I'm going to invite Jill Cunningham up at this time because also in Advent, as you know, we dedicate the plate towards different organizations. And so this week, we are going to be dedicating it to Together West Michigan, of which our church is involved. Please help me in welcoming Jill Cunningham to the pulpit.
Hello, I'm honored to share the ongoing work of Together West Michigan. I help represent Fountain Street Church among 18 congregations and nonprofits. Together, we volunteer hundreds of hours to build the collective power of regular folks to engage with decision makers who set public policy. We work to create a better community for us all. You may ask, if we are made up of volunteers, why do we need financial support? Every member congregation and nonprofit pledges dues for the guidance and training from a professional community organizer, along with the mentoring of the nation's longest-standing broad-based organizing network, the Industrial Areas Foundation. And our Fountain Street social justice team supports our mission. Through Together West Michigan, we build networks of communication across lines that often divide us. By participating, we as concerned citizens learn the skills, strategies, and needed to access and navigate the corridors of power. While meeting with people all across our community, we identified 5 key areas that are a source of strain for regular folks. These include housing availability, access to childcare, public safety, including the need for improving police-community relations, worries about access to mental health care, and challenges faced by immigrants and refugees. I have witnessed how Together West Michigan has built a platform for voices that may otherwise go unheard. At a public assembly, 2 women of the Spanish-speaking community called Chief of Police Windstrom in front of a packed sanctuary. It was striking how, as a big guy, he towered over the women, but it was more striking how they set the agenda while seeking commitments from the Grand Rapids Police Department to work with the Spanish-speaking community. He publicly agreed to the requirements. These 2 remarkable women grew into that moment, empowered by Together West Michigan. The collective strength of the community arises out of intentional relationship building. This is how Together West Michigan has gotten a seat at the table as millions of dollars in public money are directed to support affordable housing. This is how we are addressing the critical lack of access to childcare and making clear to Kent County commissioners that voters care about this issue. The hope that fuels our work is born out of unity, shared purpose, and the faith that together we can make our community more just and compassionate. There is joy in seeing that our diverse talents and perspectives build bridges that bring about change to our beloved community. Thank you to Fountain Street Church and to each of you for your continued support of Together West Michigan.
Friends, in the spirit of faith, hope, love, and of course, joy, the offering will now most graciously be received. Thank you so much, Robin and friends. There's no Joy Sunday without having you with us, so thank you. Friends, we have some invitations before we go, and some of them are also just some insights. So next week is Christmas Eve. Wow, it is Christmas Eve next week. In the 11 o'clock service, we will still have a gathering here. We will not have our choir with us, but we will have our section leaders, as well as Austin, singing a selection of beautiful solo work. We will also have readings throughout the service. I will be playing some organ. We're going to have our handbell choir. It's going to be a wonderful service that takes us through the 4 themes of Advent, and then we will finish together by lighting the peace candle, the Christmas candle. So if you want to come to both that day, I would if I didn't have to be here. I think it would be wonderful. So I would encourage you to come. 9:30 will also be available in the chapel for a labyrinth and quiet space. This is such a big time of the year, and it's also filled with a multitude of feelings. And so you are welcome to find that space in the chapel and just take part in it. So that's at 9:30 in the chapel, and then of course 11 o'clock here. Then we will be back at 9 o'clock. We will have our mass choir here. We will have Austin directing. We will have Jonathan Took back on organ, and it should be a wonderful evening. And so I hope you will find space and place for yourselves in one or both of those gatherings next Sunday. The following Sunday is a 5th Sunday. As you know, those are the Sundays where we gather and we worship in the social hall together, and it includes a potluck breakfast. We will also have casseroles and juice provided, but you are welcome to come. We'll have some liturgies of the new year, a song for the new year, and it's just a time to look back on 2023 together and anticipate 2024, which we know will be rich with opportunities for growth and community and resilience. So please consider joining us for that. Of course, I always like to end by thanking everybody who made today possible. Will you please, before I actually get you clapping on this, because I know you will, the choir, I just want to say the last several weeks have been doing music that I requested of Austin last year. It was already Evan. I said, next year, can you do this? And they did. So the Wexford Carol and Today's Piece in the Bleak Midwinter were stunning. Thank you, choir, for enriching our Advent worship. Will you help me in thanking them? Thank you. We put a lot of work into that. Of course, we always thank Jonathan Took when he's with us. That's always a treat. Thank you so much, Jonathan. To our joyful jazz trio, we give thanks. Thank you so much. And of course, to everyone who comes into this space with faith, hope, love, and joy and makes it possible, from our tech team to our custodial staff to our greeters and our ushers and our volunteers around the building, we give thanks for each and every person who makes these weekly gatherings possible. Thank you so much. As we go into these next couple weeks of the height of the Christmas season, we recognize that not everybody comes on Christmas Eve, or you travel, or you have other plans. And so, friends, this is truly the last time some of us will see one another for a few weeks or until the new year. And even if we do see one another on Christmas Eve, it's always a little more amplified as far as energy goes. So this is a bit of a moment for a Christmas blessing, sending you on your way to pursue faith, hope, love, and joy into the world. Hear these words of blessing as they send you out into another Christmas season together. Let us light candles this Christmas.
Candles of joy, despite all the sadness.
Candles of hope, where despair keeps watch.
Candles of courage for fears ever present.
Candles of peace for our tempest-tossed days.
Candles of grace to ease heavy burdens.
Candles of love to inspire all our living.
Candles that will burn all year long.
Go forth, have a Merry Christmas. It is good to be with you.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be alive. Next year all our troubles will be out of sight. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Make the Yuletide gay. Next year all our troubles will be miles away. Here we are as in olden days, happy golden days of yore. Faithful friends who are dear to us will be near to us once more. Someday soon we all will be together if the fates allow. Until then, we'll have to muddle through somehow. So have yourself a merry